All right, everybody, welcome back. This is Hauling the Mail. We just got done with our Darlington throwback weekend, if you will.
It's not really called that anymore, right? It's isn't it like
not.
Heritage?
I think, yeah, they still do something with it. They had maybe alumni weekend or something, but
Okay.
it's more of a for the people at the track than it is for the entire community now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're fresh off of Darlington, John. Tyler Reddick won his fourth race of the season. We had some interesting finishes, some maybe not so interesting racing, but all in all, it was a decent weekend at Darlington, and we're going to break it down.
Yeah, it sounds like it was. I know that you and I missed good chunks of everything happening in real time across the weekend, and it seemed from afar it was a very, it was appropriate for a throwback or heritage or alumni sort of weekend because it felt like it seemed like it felt like sort of a old fashioned type of racing weekend. So
Yeah.
that was kind of interesting to see, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, but. I think it's important to have races like this throughout the course of the season.
They can't all be home runs. They
Mm-hmm.
can't all be. But I mean, there's still little nuggets of things I think from each race that if you kind of hone in on and try to understand the race as a whole, you can appreciate at least from a sportsman point of view. At least I do, right? And I kind of compare it a little bit to football, where it's like not everyone's gonna like that 14-10 slog of a football game sometimes, but generally I do try to enjoy the schemes. I try to enjoy the coaching, the strategy aspect of it. So this weekend was a tough one for you if you're someone that's basically in it for the wrecks and the spectacle. But if you're kind of in it for the sport and the tactics and the kind of deep dynamics, then I think you still enjoyed yourself. So
Some may call that racing at its purest form, or kind of a traditionalist sort of standpoint.
mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of what Darlington lends itself to. But I think what's important, and what we'll talk about as we get into it a little more, is I think it's important to kind of compare it year over year, not necessarily to the Southern 500 weekend, the most recent
Mm-hmm.
Darlington weekend, but the spring race here a year ago. I think that's an important compare and contrast that can kind of show how much better or how much further the racing has come in 1 year.
Yeah. No, I agree. And with the Darlington thing, I think when it comes to a lot of these intermediates, what you and I tend to kind of look towards a lot comes down to the tire wear. Because when we talk about specific strategy sets of races, you and I have had this discussion on the show before about our preference between do we want a tire race or do we want a fuel race, right? Do we want to see the strategy based around the level of tire wear, the amount of tires you're using, who's using them up more, who's got the fresher ones, as opposed to just who can save the most fuel? At least me personally, that's how I feel about it. But I think we got a decent element of that on Sunday.
Well, I do feel fairly confident in saying I don't think there's been a fuel mileage Darlington race anytime recently, and I don't think there ever will be, just because it doesn't seem to matter what kind of surface they put on it, but it ages a lot almost instantly. Like, if Atlanta ages quickly, I mean, Darlington's like instantaneous, so it creates a tire wear sort of race. It's just a matter of, do you have the ability to save the tires? Is there ability to differentiate? And that's kind of what this increased horsepower was all about. So, well, I'm looking forward to talking about that.
So, well, I guess we'll get into it then. So, do you want to start with Sunday or do you want to start with Friday? What do you think?
I guess let's start with Sunday. We'll work our way
Sunday?
down the ladder, if you will, because I think
Okay.
that's what's freshest in everyone's mind. And the big picture, Tyler Reddick wins his fourth race of the season in 6 attempts, and he had a very fast car, but it was anything but an orthodox performance. It wasn't a wire-to-wire dominant win. He was very fast, but he had a, correct me if I'm wrong, but they had to replace the battery, or was it the alternator?
I think I think it was a battery thing because he was not only having trouble with maybe like the alternator, but it was also with his cooling system. It was very early on in the race that they had mentioned
Yeah.
that he had, the cooling system was going to be a no-go for him, and then there was a little bit of
Once
talk
again.
about the alternator somewhere down the line in stage one. But it's look, this kid's fast right now, so that didn't matter. they they found a way.
Yeah, and both of their two of their three team cars started up front on
Mm-hmm.
Sunday, and
Yeah, front row.
you know they weren't able to get the finish with Bubba Wallace, but Reddick being as fast as he was, it was a really gutsy sort of performance by him and the team to overcome the battery change, the cool suit failure that we're used to seeing,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's a huge credit to everyone, but especially Reddick for the way he persevered. And the strategy call, which I'm not sure how much you wanted to get into that, but the decision
Yeah.
to pit, the open wheel world would call it an overcut, which is when you pit later than everyone else. You run
Mm-hmm.
slower early, but then you pass everyone later. In the past, I feel like that hasn't been the winning type of strategy, but this
Yeah.
increased horsepower with an increased tire wear made it so that he could actually just cut through the field.
Yeah. So that was a big question I was gonna get to asking you actually was where do we sit on the pitch strategy philosophy, right? Because if you ask a Chase Elliott fan right now, they're not gonna love that idea that you just laid out to us. The long run, whatever, you stay out longer, then you pit, then in theory you'll be on fresher tires than everybody else. But how much time is lost in that time frame? Or you take that or do like what I personally like to do. This doesn't have to do with Chase's race in particular, but I personally have always loved the idea of if you get me on the nicer tires sooner than the other guy, then we can mitigate maybe that gap that's created by staying out. I personally like the idea of a short pit more than a long pit, but I wanted to ask you kind of where your head's at because, like you said, with the next gen car, it hasn't been so simple because it's kind of hard to move your way through traffic regardless of tire until the last couple of years. We saw Goodyear make a lot of changes. We've seen a lot of differences with some differences anyway with the horsepower that have kind of attributed to that. So based on what you saw Sunday, are you a short pit guy or are you a long pit guy?
Oh well, like anything, it's all nuanced and it's all based on unique scenarios and what
Mm-hmm.
what your car has been good with. I think part of the reason that Reddick was able to make the long pit, the overcut work so well is that his car was so much faster than everyone
Right.
else's.
Yeah.
As to my knowledge, Chase Elliott had a fine car, maybe not might not have been,
I don't think it was
a
ever
top
good
level,
enough to probably win that race based on the
but it should
speed
have been a
of the
probably should have been a top
2311
10
guys
car
or
though,
the
right?
RFK guard. Yeah, I think it should have been top 10, and I don't have where he finished right in front of me. I think it was in the teens. But
Well, let's call it a 8th to 12th place or whatnot.
sure.
If you do what Reddick did and you don't have a car that's as fast, you're gonna need to have an even more pronounced difference in tires, which means you're gonna have to hold out for even longer. So it's really a fine line, and I think it only worked this year because of the increased horsepower. Because it felt like passing, while still difficult at Darlington as it always is, it seemed as though from afar that guys were able to, not necessarily be concerned if they weren't fast right off the bat. They were able to make moves throughout the field. And
Hmm.
Ryan Blaney had said in a post race interview that this was the first time really in his career where he knew like ahead of time that if someone drove past him immediately, he's like, I'll see you in 20 laps. So
Sure.
I think being able to move through the field like that, if you have a really good car, was kind of the key difference because I was highlighting the idea that we're comparing this race to the spring race at Darlington from a year ago. If you remember, William Byron led the first, I think, like something like 200 some odd laps of that
He's
race.
dominating it.
And what was happening though is he was catching the back of the field and it became gridlock because no one
Hmm.
could pass due to the aero aero blocking issues that we've seen in this car for years, and with the increased horsepower, or with the decreased horsepower, I mean, once Byron got stuck in traffic after Blaney and Denny Hamlin had undercut him, he never got around them again. It was those two guys up in front instead. Now that I think we saw that the Reddick situation was an illustration that that wouldn't be the case if it, with the new increased horsepower. So I think that was a really key difference this year.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think to that point, we've seen a lot of guys do it to an advantage to a certain point, but I think it really is, for me, car dependent. If you have a fast race car or like one of the fastest race cars, then by all means, long cut it, go, or what you overcut it, and then be that guy that can make those moves. And I think the other angle of it too, which we didn't really see come to fruition, is where does that put you should there be a late caution, right?
Yeah.
If we're talking about a late restart, you obviously want the fresher stuff, but on the same flip side, with the fall off that we saw, how many guys that shortcut it say, all right, we're going to short pit it, we're going to try and minimize that gap, and then if we do get that late restart, we'll come in, then we'll get the nice tires, and then we'll just try and blitz the field while we're packed together, because obviously the hardest time for you to cut through the field is when they are their most stretched out.
Yep.
And if you're a car that's not particularly passing well, which in my opinion the 9 wasn't really passing well, they opened the weekend with speed, but you just kind of seen them slowly matriculate down the leaderboard, and then you long pit, and it's like you didn't have the passing power that the 45 or the 6 or the 17 had to just go out there and carve up the field, in droves and take it over. At least not without a restart. So,
yeah,
that's why I personally lean short. But
I do think conventional wisdom would say if you are struggling to get around somebody, that maybe undercutting the short pitting is the way to go, because then you're also kind of putting that, like you said, you're kind of putting your faith in the idea that there's going to be a caution. And you'll remember last year there was a late caution with just a handful of laps to go. I think it was Kyle Larson, and there ended up being an overtime restart. This year that obviously wasn't the case. There were very long green flag runs. I actually took a tally of the green flag runs. Last year there was one green flag run that was longer than 43 laps. It was 89. And in this race alone there were 3 that were 70 laps or longer. So, and that's another part of the whole tire wear thing. Because there was only one long green flag run last year, you didn't see the tire wear fully taking effect like it could have. It was like it was just starting to become a factor, and then there would be a caution. And obviously you saw that in spades this week. So it was interesting. Again, like you said, if you're into the tire wear strategy or I being able to go back and watch kind of like the difference in when they pitted on the final stage between Briscoe, Keselowski, and Tyler Reddick. And you're kind of then intently watching. It's like, okay, the chips have been laid down. How's it going to play out? And it was all said and done with like 15, 20 laps to go, it felt like, but
something like that. As soon as he passed the 6, it was like, okay, this is over if there's no caution.
Yeah,
because it was obvious he had the best car.
Oh yeah.
The 6 had the best day to that point, given the issues the 45 was having, and then they had a pit issue there at the end of stage 1, if I remember right. They were a little long on their pit stop there, so it allowed RFK to kind of take control of the day a little bit. But clearly the 45 was the one car that just carved through the field like butter. So yeah, I mean,
so maybe a bit. I was just going to say maybe a bit anticlimactic, but again, if you're paying attention to that, if that's something you care about, it will be something you're interested in until, all the, everything has basically been decided. At that point, you're just kind of, it's almost like waiting for the end, which we're not really, I don't want to say you're not used to as much in NASCAR these days, but it was definitely not something that I'd say we're used to.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and I still to this day talk to a few people that don't watch NASCAR, and they ask me and they try to understand, and you get people that say, well, we just look for the wrecks and stuff, and it's like, I implore you to at least try to get into the tire stuff, get into the they lose the intricacies, because I think a lack of enjoyment can easily come from a lack of understanding. And it happens, right? There's no judgment for a lack of understanding, because it's complicated and it changes all the time. There's track temps, there's tire, different tire codes or whatever. There's all these other factors that kind of go into play that make these what they are. It's just so difficult. And I've told a lot of people, I'm like, look, you watched football and you enjoyed it for the big hits when you were a kid, but now that you're an adult, how many times are you watching a football game and you go, that's a bad play call there, or you go, he should have done this when they did this, or we settled for the field goal, we should have done, you know what I mean? Like, it's those kinds of things that when you're naive to the understanding of the actual game within the game, it's like you're just about the excitement. But to understand the finer detail stuff is to open yourself up to enjoying those races that don't have the big wrecks, because they're the ones with the big wrecks are the easiest to follow, and that's okay. That's okay. But Darlington was interesting in its own right without the wrecks, if you knew what to look for. In terms of excitement, though, John,
I just really wanted to say that that's why the NASCAR schedule is so great, because it's very diverse and it offers a different, meal. Think of it like a meal, a different course for whatever you want. If you want the high-flying crashes and entertainment and exciting finishes, we've got Daytona and Atlanta. If you want the racing purist, and Talladega. And if you want the racing purist sort of finishes, you're maybe more looking at what happened this past weekend at Darlington and other tracks. So there's a wide, diverse schedule, and there's something for everybody. That's what I like about the NASCAR schedule.
Yep. So speaking of the excitement angle, we did get a little bit of I think there were a lot of people that might have had a level of boredom to it, that wanted to make something out of something, and we had that incident there in the last pit cycle where Chris Buescher is leading the race. I forget the lap number. He's leading the race with how they're coming up on their final lap, their final pit stop, and he's getting caught by his teammate Brad Keselowski. And I'm watching in the moment, and I'm going, okay, you fend him off, and the minute he passes you, you immediately pit. That was my thinking. I'm like, the minute he passes you, come down to pit.
Yeah.
And we kind of saw that, right? So the 6 gets by the 17. The 17's kind of coming from an awkward place, and he immediately goes, okay, I need to pit, but I think they're coming through 3 at that point, or wherever the entry is.
They're about to get into 3.
Yep.
Like he had cleared him halfway down the backstretch, I think.
Yep, and he moves down, and as he moves down, the 45 is coming, with the speed of God behind him. And then you just see it on camera, wham, and then all of a sudden the 17 starts to go sideways, they go up, he claps the wall, the 45 goes on, the 17 goes around another cycle, and then pits, so he loses a ton of spots. There was a lot of conversation on the internet this weekend, John. Was that fair? Was that foul? They had some talks on TV about, like, well, the spotters don't wave up here anymore for that type of thing, and he just kind of did it so fast. I immediately thought of, like, the Ty Dillon, William Byron thing last year.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Where it's like you don't see it too often when you get this confusion between a guy going into the pits or not. But in your opinion, and I'm assuming you've seen the highlight, in your opinion, was anyone out of line?
I really just think it's a bang bang sort of play, Will. I mean, I think the default sort of position has to be, I'm going to put the onus on the car that's in front for them to signal or give some sort of indication that they're coming to pit. That's not foolproof, of course, Will, because think about like a scenario where a guy's going into like turn 3 and they realize they got a tire down, and all of a sudden they got to hit the brakes or something, or else they're going to spin out. It's not perfect, but I would always default to it's on the guy that's in front, whether it's his team or the driver, however they want to decide how they want to handle that. It sounds like they made the call late, and I
like
can understand.
It kind of came off like this thing, like they're kind of thinking might have been the same as me, is like we're gonna fight the 6th off as long as possible, and the minute that we lose that battle is when we come in, and it was right smack dab in the middle of the pit cycle. I mean, I want to say half the field had kind of either come in or was coming into pit road at the time, and it just, like you said, I agree. I think it was kind of bang bang in the moment. Selfishly for my fantasy team, I have Chris Buescher. In the moment, I went, here we go again. How many times I got to watch the 45, dunk the 17 car?
It was so funny to be like, it was so funny to think about what happened here 2 years ago,
yeah.
and it's like, we're doing this again, huh?
We're doing it again. So like,
yeah.
I think that's also kind of what kind of fueled this a little bit, was like there's a little bit of history with these two.
Just direct. Ironically enough, between those three drivers at the front, no less, which is the funny thing about it.
Yeah. Well, now we know for next time we go to Darlington in the spring who we're looking at. But yeah, it's.
I guess so. Yeah.
I agree. You watch it a few times and you're like, I'm not gonna sit here and say the 17 was out of line by a mile. It's all going so fast, and I think.
And at this track too.
Yeah. I mean,
at this track,
the 45 should have seen him. It wasn't like it. It wasn't like he was on his tail and then just Buescher hit the brake. It just, Buescher's there, and then all of a sudden, straight into the picture is the 45, and it's just like, guy came through like a bullet. He hit him. He popped him square, knocked him forward, and then clearly out of shape, and he went up and he kind of hit flush on the wall.
And that's the only reason it ended up. That's the only reason it ended up not being a caution, and I think. I had seen online that I think Harvick had pointed out, or Mike Joy had pointed out, that like one of the interesting things about this Gen 7 car is because of the composite body, it doesn't, crumple, and it just bounces kind of, which while maybe more dangerous for the driver, especially early on in this car's history, it allows you to be able to save it. So
it's like taking your two Matchbox cars and
just slamming them into each other.
Yeah,
and they. Again, NASCAR held the yellow flag. I remember seeing that video and seeing Buescher sideways, and I'm like, man, a couple of years ago, or maybe even last year at one point, depending on the race, maybe they throw the yellow for that. So it was interesting, but I mean,
it works out for the 45. He goes,
he
gets his fourth win. He's very square atop the standings, and I don't think anyone's going to sniff him at least until summertime. As long as he just finishes races.
And he's won a race after plowing someone in the back with his nose, and he's won one without a right front fender. I mean, I guess he doesn't need anything.
No AC, no electric.
A failing battery.
Why don't we just put a blindfold on the dude and let's see what happens?
This year it's Tyler Reddick's
Maybe
world.
Then we can get the Bubba Wallace win across the board. But
I guess so, right? Yeah.
We'll get more into why that's relevant later. Real quick, John, before we move on to first class return to sender, let's talk about the Friday and Saturday races. So Saturday, Justin Allgaier wins his fourth race at Darlington in his O'Reilly career. He wasn't the most dominant car of the day. It was looking like we were going to get a perfect day out of Kyle Larson for a while. He gets the pole. He's leading basically through the first two stages. He wins both those stages, and we get kind of late in the race there, and we get a couple. In the moment, I was a little fired up. Again, fantasy related, but I get a little fired up when I see that sub 20th, 25th, 30th place cars get into an issue, bring out a caution when a guy is running away with a race. And we go into pit road, and then we have an issue on pit road, and Kyle Larson loses like 4 spots. Justin Allgaier kind of comes out the front row, and he takes it away. I forget who it was at the time he was racing. Brandon Jones, I think. I think it was Brandon Jones he was racing hard with. And Justin Allgaier kind of comes through, takes the lead, and they don't look back, and no more cautions means Justin Allgaier wins another one. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it is funny because I think Darlington with the tire wear is one of those places that where you start doesn't matter as much. But this O'Reilly race, this one in particular, is like one of the shortest of the year in terms of like actual like mileage. It's only 147 laps, so things can happen pretty quickly. But yeah, I mean, my main takeaway that I can recall is that like several guys made a bunch of mistakes, and the mistakes were killer. I mean, Larson's long pit stop, like you mentioned, he had been in control of the entire race. And then another guy that was really struggling was your favorite driver, Austin Hill, who had, it sounds like, a day from hell. Where
I wasn't saying very nice things about him on Saturday.
So you were kicking him while he was down?
Well, I remember fondly sitting there watching the race with Dad. And
fondly, yes.
And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, you see, this is why people say he's only worth it at a super speedway. because we get to the real tracks and this is what it looks like. But we don't need to go into my Austin Hill slander today.
There's
He
plenty of
certainly
time.
took it enough on the shins this weekend.
One guy, or rather one team that deserves a lot of credit, though, is the Viking Motorsports pair, Parker Retzlaff and Anthony Alfredo,
That
coming
boy's
through
running
with
good.
an eighth and 12th place finish, and both of them
Yeah.
scored stage points in both stages, not just
Yep.
one stage, but both. So
And
a lot
in
of
a
credit
minute when
to
we
those
talk
guys.
about in a minute when we talk about the standings, we'll get into what that's done for the 99 car as it relates to the O'Reilly series. But yeah, man, it's nice to see someone not named JRM and JGR go out there and run consistently well. I mean, he looked good. He was a top 7-8 car there for most of the day. He just was constantly there. I don't think he was ever a race winning car, but you gotta go somewhere, right? You gotta I think to be a consistent race winning car, you need to show that you're a top 10 car first. And I think 99 in particular has looked like it.
I also
I
think
agree,
it was a solid indicator for. And I'm just looking at other guys who finished up near the front on top of those two guys, but namely Corey Day and Carson Kvapil, guys who on the younger end of the spectrum as far as the O'Reilly series is concerned. For them to put together strong performances at Darlington of all places, I think that serves them all really well. And Corey Day in particular, after a rough start in terms of optics to the year, has kind of put together several relatively quiet weeks. So good for him.
You got to give the guy credit where it's due, right? We gave him a hard time on this show about a month ago, and
Well
rightfully
earned,
so.
by the way.
We talked about it. Like the position you're in with Hendrick Motorsports, that kind of stuff can't happen. But in the midst of it all, other than Daytona, he's been top 10 with stage points every single race. He's got 2 top 5s, 5 top 10s in the 5 races since then, and he's gotten somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 7 stage points each week. So this is a guy that's putting it together. We have to learn to finish and finish clean before we can catapult ourselves to a win just by plowing everyone all the time. So yeah, props where it's due, man. He's been a welcome surprise the last, maybe not even a surprise, but he's been a welcome contender the last few weeks, and he certainly earned it after all the grief he took.
You know who's not a surprise whenever he races is Corey Heim in the Truck Series.
Never a surprise, man. Never a surprise. But you say that, right? He's never a surprise, but I can definitively tell you going into that final restart, I didn't think he had a chance to win. I was completely shocked. I'm sitting at a bar with my dad. We're watching the race, and we're just watching. And I'm like, and mind you, it's on my phone. And I'm like, there's a little gray truck coming through. Who is that? That guy's car. That's Corey Heim.
Shades of Phoenix last year.
And then I'm like, I don't know, man. I still don't think he could take the win. And then sure as hell, there he goes. He just blazes by Ross Chastain and Corey Heim doing Corey Heim things. What are you supposed to do? I mean,
I missed the stat, and maybe you can pull it up for me if I can't find it here. But isn't he something? He's like top 10. Isn't he like 5th in truck points right now? Even though he's only done half the races.
He's only done 2 races so far, right?
But they've only had 4 this year, so he's done half of them. I'm fairly certain. True. I'm fairly certain he's. I know he's top 10.
8th.
I think he's top.
He's 8th in points.
Which
8th
is
in points
just,
with a win, with 2 starts.
That's just crazy.
That's absurd.
What's wild is he's only led 34 laps in the 2 races he's been in, which is
he hasn't been particularly dominant. He hasn't looked like himself. He certainly had his flashes in this race, but you'll remember, I think it was it not
Atlanta.
St. Petersburg, Atlanta. He kind of he was in the mix there for a while, but then towards the end he just was never really quite there, and you're just like, that was unusual. But then this week it was another one of like, he was good, but he wasn't amazingly, like he wasn't dominating that race, and then just kind of takes it at the end. Bully for me and my fantasy team, I guess. I ain't gonna complain.
He's ahead of 14 drivers, full-time drivers in the Truck Series standings.
Yeah. So while we're looking at it, why don't we go ahead and do a points breakdown? So
all right, let's do it.
We talk about the Cup Series, obviously, with the Tyler Reddick win. He's now up to 4, and he's got a commanding lead. In fact, he's got, I believe it's a 95-point lead on the next guy, and Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney moves up 2 more spots. He's got a win on the year. Bubba Wallace kind of falls down to 3rd, which isn't that bad considering, he was right around 2nd. I think he was at 2nd. He takes damn near last, but he gets, still hangs in there in 3rd. Denny Hamlin is still up to 4th. I mean, Denny Hamlin's still cruising Chase Elliott in top 5. Some of the more notable movers, we got Chris Buescher. He's in the top 10 now. Brad Keselowski, I was low-key rooting for him to win that race, and he looked like he very well could have.
I thought he was going to, yeah.
Yeah, he's top 10 in half the races so far. He's got a couple stage points. He's led 156 laps on the season, which is more than guys like Larson and Elliott. He's sitting right there in 9th, so he's squarely in the conversation right now. He's right in it. Ryan Preece is another guy up in there. And the Spire cars, with the exception of Michael McDowell, are in the mix right now. So, not a whole lot of big-time movers. Obviously, Tyler Reddick was the big separator with a win, but it's interesting to see. We talked about, and we'll get into it a little bit later when we do our kind of stock up, down, if you will, later on in the show. But where some of these Penske guys are, where some of these Spire guys are, we're seeing a little bit of guys that are in the mix that I don't think, like AJ Allmendinger is in 18th place. I mean, he's not even 20 points up below the cut line, and we didn't really give Kaulig a chance earlier in the year. So there's some of that, some notables obviously. Ross Chastain, Cindric, they're kind of out of the mix right now as it sits. Kyle Busch, the season continues to just implode on him. He's down in 23rd, and obviously with the absence of Alex Bowman, his odds at the playoffs are all but dead. So that's roughly where we sit right now in the Cup Series.
I want to highlight 2 things. Number 1, there are 10 drivers, from 2nd Ryan Blaney to 11th Ty Gibbs. Everyone else beyond that has fewer than half the points that Tyler Reddick has. I just wanted to point that out. He has
Crazy.
double or more of the points of everyone else up to Ty Gibbs in 11th place right now. And I also wanted to point out, you talked about the Penske cars. Mm-hmm. I don't know what happened to Joey Logano this weekend. Was that like the worst weekend he's had? Was that like the worst weekend he's had since he got to Penske? Because, again, I missed a lot of the weekend.
He qualified poorly, and they just, when the race got going, you just didn't hear from him. Because usually those kind of guys, they start low, and then you see them kind of, matriculate up the list a little bit. But you didn't see anything. Didn't notice him until all of a sudden you're seeing Tyler Reddick kind of go by him, and you're like, wait a minute. Is that Joey Logano getting lapped? And it was. He's down in like 34th getting lapped, and they played audio, and they just, whatever the setup was meant to be that week, they just missed it. They just totally missed it. So
Austin Cindric has more
extenuating.
Austin Cindric has more stage points this year than Joey Logano. The much maligned Austin Cindric. I just figured I'd throw that out there. So it hasn't been good, but
yeah, no. We'll get into more of that in the stock stuff, but real quick, just to wrap up the point stuff we got in the O'Reilly series, almost got me there. In the O'Reilly series, Justin Allgaier, obviously with his 2 wins, has got a pretty solid lead. He's 52 points above Jesse Love with his 5 top 10s. He did not finish top. He finished 11th. So Jesse Love officially didn't get a top 10 for the first time this season. This week, that was a bummer. Carson Cavapel's up in 3rd right now. He's really kind of proven some people. I don't want to say proven some people wrong or right, but like there's a lot of people that believed in him and were kind of set off by the idea that he didn't have a full-time ride for the entirety of the season. He's going out there and he's putting it on paper right now. Sheldon Creed's up there. Austin Hill goes down 2 spots with his poor finish. We talked about him before. Corey Day sits squarely in 7th place. He's 118 points behind, and he's got his 5 top 10s. Brandon Jones is another guy that's doing well for himself. He's up in 8th. And the guy you had mentioned before, John, Parker Retzlaff in that 99 car for Viking Motorsports. Not sure many of us were giving that car a chance this year. He's sitting right in 9th place. He is 137 points back from the leader. He's right there in the mix with Corey Day in terms of points, as well as Brandon Jones. He's got 2 top 10s, some stage points. He's doing well. Raja Karuth's another name we've talked about a lot on this show. He sits 10th. He lost a couple spots this week. But we're going to see him back in the 88 car for a couple weeks, starting this weekend at Martinsville. So we'll see if they kind of rebound a little bit and kind of jump back up. And then we start talking about some guys that maybe we expected to be more in the mix, but haven't quite been. Sam Mayer's down in 11th place. He's kind of had a hot and cold season so far, but we haven't really seen race-winning power from him yet. Taylor Gray's another one. He's got a couple DNFs on him, so he's down in 12th. And William Sawalich in 13th. Is the cutoff 12 for the chase
Yes.
for O'Reilly?
Yep.
So William Sawalich is the first guy out. He's out by 13 points right now with 2 DNFs. So a couple of JGR guys down there.
Much better than where he was a year ago, ironically enough.
Yeah. Well, Sawalich was...
this time last year he was like 33rd or something.
Yeah. So, I mean, otherwise it's the usual cast of characters. I think the one thing to keep an eye on right now is with Brent Cruz kind of going to be stepping in. I believe it's either this weekend or the next. Brent Cruz in that 19 car, if he can kind of work, because we've seen a lot of speed out of him in the couple races he was in it so far. So it'll be interesting to see if he kind of works his way. He's currently down in, I just had it in front of me. He's down in 29th place. He's 247 points behind first place, but he is, I want to say 70. He's about 70 points behind the cut line.
I think Cruz is taking over the rest of the year now, by the way.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be the one to watch right there, is to see if he works his way back into the picture, and if he can sneak off a win or two, he could have a chance. He could certainly do it. So that's where we stand in the O'Reilly series. And real quick, you mentioned before, Corey Haim's down in 8th place somehow, and he's only run half the Truck Series races. I don't know if he's going to participate in the chase. Not that it would matter, because I don't think he's going to run a lot of those races. But right now, Chandler Smith is your leader. 33 points behind him is Caden Honeycutt. Then you have Lane Riggs, Gio Ruggiero, Ty Majeski. Those are your top 5. Mostly usual cast of characters. The big eye poppers, the Heim thing. You got Andres Perez in 9th. He's 82 points back. And then you got a couple Ram trucks sitting right there in 10th and 11th with Justin Haley and Brendan Queen. So they're treading water a little bit. His Truck Series is 10 cars.
Yep.
I probably should know this stuff. Yeah, so you have Brendan Queen just on the outside looking in. Tyler Rankrum's a guy that we've seen in the playoffs the last couple of years. He's in 12th. You have Friesian that's tied with him. Friesian's had a decent season so far. Not outstanding, but for the injury he's coming off of, it's been impressive. Some guys that we expected in the mix that haven't quite got there yet. You have Grant Enfinger in 17th. Tanner Gray in 16th. Jake Garcia 15th. Daniel Hemrick's on the outside looking in right now. He's the guy I think we expected a little bit more from. So, other than that, nothing too shocking in terms of the Truck Series run there. So, that's where we stand with all that. Go ahead.
I wanted to mention a couple things. I had, about a year or two ago, Dale Jr. had been asked, based purely on talent, who he thought one of the best O'Reilly Series drivers was that maybe isn't getting a lot of love. If he could hire someone that was independent of money or whatnot, he said he would have picked Parker Retzlaff. So that's kind of when I started paying attention to him, and anyone who's not should at this point going forward. And then number 2, I had just seen something, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I thought I saw something on Twitter that Denny Hamlin had been approached and asked if he wanted to race in that 5 truck this past weekend, and he eventually deferred to Corey Haim, which that seems almost unbelievable. Has Denny Hamlin even done truck race before?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I know he's done a few O'Reilly. Can't recall if he's done a truck race or not.
I need to try to figure this out, because it was one of those things where it popped up on the feed, and then if you press the refresh button, or if you haven't been on the screen for a while and you click it, it'll refresh automatically, and now it's gone. So I'm now desperately trying to find it, but I can figure that out later. So we can move on.
I will say just real quick, because I might have it in front of me. He's run 16 races in the Truck Series. 2 wins, 10 top 10s in those 16 races, and 1 pole.
I never would have guessed that.
The last time The last time he ran a Truck Series race was 2013 in Martinsville. So, and ironically, the Martinsville race is one that he's won in the past. So, kudos to him. All right, John, what do you say? First class return to sender?
All right, let's go for it.
Let's talk about some fun stuff. Let's talk about some fun stuff. So, for first class, I'll go first. To lead off the race on this alumni / throwback / vintage / whatever the hell you want to call it weekend, we had in the Fox broadcast ODW, Darrell Wallace, opening up the race
Waltrip.
with a good, what did I say?
You said Wallace, as in Bubba Wallace.
That's on me. He deserves better than that, so I'll revert back. DW, Darrell Waltrip, opening up the race with the good old classic boogity, 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 let's go racing, boys. Never gets old, John.
Always touches the heart when you,
yeah.
You know, especially for people our age who grew up with him in the booth. And, you know, it was him, Mike Joy, and Larry Mack. And even though those, Larry Mack isn't in his typical role that we were accustomed to, and Mike Joy might not be, calling races at the same speed or intensity that he used to, it's still nice to hear from them, of course. And obviously DW's been retired from the Fox booth for about 7 years now, and this isn't the first time he's kind of had a brief foray back into the booth. Before. I know he did the Bristol Dirt Race, I think the second year they did that, so that would have been like 22 or 23. So, it's always nice to hear from you.
These are the kinds of things, and I know you're going to get into it in a little bit,
yes.
But these are the kinds of things that you want out of these types of weekends when you do, maybe not the force feeding the certain throwback type ideas down your throat, but the very idea that just one cool throwaway idea is to bring DW in the booth and let him do his thing. Just let the guy do his thing. It doesn't have to be anything spectacular, and I thought it was fun. I enjoyed kind of hearing his thoughts on what the race was so far in stage one, and it certainly made it more interesting. So that's my first class of the weekend is good old DW with his boogities.
And if I may, that's also not the first time they've done something like that. The fans of an older generation, too, will remember the old CBS booth with, I believe, Ned Jarrett and Ken Squire, and I'm forgetting the third one. This is bad. I'm blanking on who the third gentleman was. But in any case, they had the three of them call. It wouldn't have been
Benny Parsons, would it?
No. I'm blanking on it. I'm going to look it up in a minute, but they had the three of them calling, I think, like one segment of a stage between commercial breaks. And, again, like you said, that's kind of what it's all about. So I'll touch on that in a minute. But my first class specifically is what we talked about earlier, the higher horsepower. I consider myself more of a racing purist fan. I don't love drawn out races that are like, super spread out, but I enjoy them at a place like Darlington because I think again, as far as a racing purist is concerned, it's about what is in the driver's hands. The tire wear is a lot of it's in the driver's hands about how they've set their car up in practice or qualifying and how they've managed it throughout the race, how their team has adjusted on the car. And even though Tyler Reddick had the fastest car throughout the day, conditions changed throughout the race. As we know, he went to the back of the field. So big props to NASCAR for increasing the horsepower on smaller tracks, and is specifically for Darlington, because this is all the 750 horsepower package is being used at shorter tracks under 1.5 miles. This is one of the larger tracks we'll see this year with the increased horsepower. Another place to look at, Will, is going to be Nashville Superspeedway. I believe that's a 1.33 miles, so that's about roughly the same size as Darlington. Different surface with the concrete, but still, it'll be kind of cool to see what does that look like, because it could be a preview of maybe next year if NASCAR decides, hey, we want to bump that horsepower up permanently. So I was really excited to see that. That is my first class this week. On the flip side, as far as what we're returning to sender, Will, what were you frustrated by this week?
And I wouldn't even say it's this weekend. It's been over the course of the season so far. So my thumbs down, or if you watched Project Hail Mary this weekend, not the thumbs down, but here's my pop culture reference for the day. The thing that's kind of lingered this year, John, and we've seen it after Atlanta, and then we've seen it some more after COTA, is this ideology or this frustration with 2311.
Internet conspiracy theory garbage.
Yeah, this NASCAR's fixing it because of the lawsuit for Michael Jordan in 2311, and Tyler Reddick dominating all these. And I wouldn't even say dominating all these races, but because he's winning all these races, naturally we see this in the sport all the time, and it's partially why this next gen car exists, is the lack of parity, being that 2311's winning all the time. We see a lot of people getting frustrated, and they think, and because it's not Hendrick maybe, or it's not, it's not someone fresh, they're already tired of seeing Tyler Reddick winning races, so they're just naturally hating on the whole thing and saying it's fixed, and honestly, I'm over it.
It was part of the lawsuit settlement. That's my favorite one.
It's like, to be honest with you, John, and we've talked about this before, if NASCAR was really fixing these races, Bubba Wallace would win more. Chase Elliott, Chase Elliott would be your Daytona 500 champion if NASCAR was really interested in fixing this for their ratings, for their benefit.
Kyle Busch would win more recently.
Kyle Busch would won that Daytona 500 a couple years. It's just, this whole NASCAR fixing it thing drives me nuts, because it's like we just spent 45 minutes talking about how this wasn't a race filled with wrecks, so we want to appreciate the strategy. We want to appreciate the details that are kind of under the hood that we're not privy to all the time as a fair weather fan. And you take away from all that if you're just like, well, NASCAR's just kind of shoehorning this 2311 thing, and we're just doing what we can to get him to the lead. And it's like, come on, like, give the guy his props. He's fast. He's won a regular season title. He's made it to a championship race.
Yeah, it really discredits all the good things he's done in his career.
Like Tyler Reddick, to me, John, is a top 5 talent in this sport right now.
It's hard to argue against it.
If you had
even before this year,
if you're picking guys to be in your race team and you get to pick 5, and it doesn't matter what you pay him or anything, Tyler Reddick's going to be one of the first 5 guys you pick. At least to me, he is.
I have a hard time thinking of 5 that I'd pick ahead of him.
Yeah. So it's like, if you're out there and you're poo-pooing this whole thing because 2311 seems to be taking over right now, then I think you're pointing your anger at someone else, at the wrong thing. So my thumbs down, my return to sender, slap the yellow sticker on it, give it right back, is the 2311 hate.
I just love that argument that it's all because of the lawsuit settlement. It's like, again, like, Bubba Wallace is having a great year, yes, but where does Riley Herbst figure into this? The poor guy is, they were like, man, he's having a good day today, and he was running 14th at the time or something, and like that guy would be begging for a little bump from the lawsuit settlement. And then everyone conveniently forgets, as they forgot even during the trial, they'd never mention this team, is that Front Row Motorsports was a part of that winning part of the lawsuit when they settled. Right. And they're just as slow as they were a year ago, if not worse. Mm-hmm. So,
and if we were really
just
worried
ignore
about
that.
If we were really worried about 2311 being 1, 2, 3 and winning all the time, then maybe when they did the settlement, they should have said, okay, 2311, you have to have a 4th ride and you have to put Corey Heim full time.
Yeah,
but we didn't do that.
Someone needs to take them to court for that. But I digress.
We don't even need to get into that. Yeah, go ahead.
As far as my return to sender this week, we touched on it a little bit. The whole discourse around Throwback Weekend or Heritage, Alumni, whatever you want to call this, I don't love how negative people are a lot. I could understand why people were poo-pooing the idea of Throwback Weekend as it stood, going into last year, because half the teams were doing it. It felt like everything that could have been done as far as a paint scheme, wrap, calling back to older days had already been done. I can understand wanting to step back from that and change it a little bit. Mm-hmm. I am a little concerned about what is this weekend going to be, because I think it's something that's good for the sport, and there needs to be some sort of purpose to it, because if it's not really properly defined, in my opinion, going forward, you risk that weekend losing its value. I don't know if you saw, Will, but it didn't look like the stands were jam-packed full to me, which is kind of a theme among tracks that have 2 dates. And the Throwback Weekend, as it was previously defined, gave the first Darlington race of the season a purpose as far as like the broader audience. And without that, it's just another race. And again, we've touched on why we like that, but in the big picture of tracks only having one race weekend a year, Darlington now having two, and kind of with the Southern 500 being the crown jewel that it is, this spring race, I don't want to say it's losing its identity, but I think it's important to define what it's going to be. Because if we're doing a heritage weekend, it doesn't necessarily need to be at Darlington every year. Maybe it's something that can rotate, like North Wilkesboro would be a great place for it sometime. Or I'm not saying you would ever do it at Daytona, but Daytona is one of their older racetracks.
That's
You know,
the most
certainly
historic
most
one.
famous.
Yeah.
Martinsville would be another good one. My point
Bristol,
is that
I would argue, yeah.
yeah, Bristol too. I think you could make. I think you could have a heritage weekend at a lot of different places. I kind of view it almost like what the Hall of Fame weekend is in the NFL, except you can move it around instead of having it in one location.
Yeah.
So if you do that, I just worry about what happens to the spring Darlington date, because even though the racing could be good compared to what it was a year ago, what's the draw for the fans, right? So
Right.
I don't know. That's just something to think about. So I'm returning that part of it to the sender, just the what I consider to be maybe a somewhat cloudy future for this track as far as the spring date is concerned.
Yeah, I would say this in relation to Throwback Weekend. You and I talked about this last year before we started the show about it's good to a point, right? We enjoy it. We enjoy the paint schemes, and I can't speak to the amount of heritage or throwback stuff they did at the track this weekend because I wasn't there. But as someone who's been watching and following the sport for as long as I've just about been alive, I can imagine that the presence of that weekend brings something to that place that would otherwise make me not consider that track to go to. So yeah, I agree with you. I do think there's a place for this, especially at Darlington or at places where we may not already celebrate the history of the sport. That's why, like the Daytona thing, is like Daytona's the place that has the most history. But I feel like we sufficiently do that every year with the Daytona 500. And if you're not, then maybe you're just not. Maybe you're not approaching it the same way I am. But I do love it. You know, the few times I do get to a race, whenever I do go, I do enjoy seeing those old cars. I do enjoy the idea of seeing things that remind us of the past. So I agree with you. I didn't want to get rid of it completely, but I do understand the dynamic of, like, the more and more we forced teams and people to participate, the more they just, I don't want to say shortcutted it, but the more they just kind of went through the motions, and it kind of it took away some of its enamor, right? Especially with the paint scheme part of it, because we were running through stuff, and then guys are out here running throwbacks to themselves or throwbacks to things that we're not privy to, like, and it's nice enough, right? You get guys that are like, oh, this is the throwback to my go-kart from when I'm 10, and I'm like, great. I won't say I don't care, but I just, I don't connect to that. So from a fan's point of view, the lack of a throwback essence was a little missed. And it like you said, I do worry what that'll mean for that track and having two dates. But there are certain things that you can do in that weekend, especially in person, that I think can maybe keep it around. I can't speak to what they had going on over the course of the weekend there, but at least for what it meant for me on TV, it was noticeable. And look, I've got the throwback Bill Elliott Coors Melling jersey on. I've got the baseball Dale hat on because you and I have talked about it before. One of the earliest memories is the 2001 Daytona race in July where Dale Jr. wins his first time back at Daytona after his dad's passing. So stuff like that you don't want to disappear forever, but I do think there's going to have to be smaller doses of it to keep it from being worn out. And you and I talked about it. This was our concern with the whole playoff conversation, right? Was we saw what happens over the course of 10 years of doing throwback every single weekend, right? To a point where guys are like, I'm kind of tired of even running the throwback. And we were giving teams hard times for not doing it. And then when we talked about the playoffs, I expressed concern about switching to a 36 race playoff, or not playoff, but a 36 race points. It's like, look,
full season format.
it's nice on paper, but we don't do it anymore for a reason, right? And it'll be fun at first. It's nostalgic. You're like, yes, this is what it used to be, the Winston Cup days, and it's great. But how long before that dies off and people are like, this thing's decided already. I don't care anymore. How much do you put weight into the nostalgic angle before you have to take that step back and say, okay, we need to do something that doesn't necessarily have to be nostalgic but still celebrates the history of the sport.
That's why I said a couple weeks ago this Tyler Reddick season so far is the perfect kind of breakdown for what NASCAR could have wanted.
The great ode to why you went back to what you did. And right now, I think it's funny, right? Everyone talks about wanting that 36 race or the chase back, and they get it back. And then this is the kind of stuff we used to get. Tyler Reddick's won 4 races, and he's got a monstrous lead, and everyone's calling NASCAR fixing the races. And it's like, can't win with you guys.
In fairness, this is a bit more rare because there was that stat that only Dale Earnhardt and Bill Elliott have won 4 of the first 6 races in a season.
I think that's what it was. I remember Bill Elliott. I just rewatched it a little earlier. I do remember Bill Elliott being on there. Yeah.
So there's that. So
all right, John. We're about at an hour, so let's get into some race picks, and we'll speed run this. So quick,
I was going to say I have the entry lists up here if you want. I'll just refer you to that whenever you're ready.
I'll review last week. So going into last week, it was 4-1. It was 4-1 going into Darlington. You picked Denny Hamlin for Cup. You picked Kyle Larson. At the time, it was just the Junior Motorsports 88. We weren't sure who was going to be in it yet. In the O'Reilly.
Shot in the dark.
And then you went with Corey Heim in the Truck Series. You got a win out of Corey Heim. So, props to you. You got that win. Kyle Larson ended up 4th after that whole late race pit stop that you and I talked about earlier. And you had Denny Hamlin, who was 11th. He had the best average finish going into the race, but he was never really a contender, I don't think. I ran the numbers, John. Your average finish on the weekend, and we can determine how we decide this. Your average finish was 5.3.
This is just going to end up with me losing again, isn't it?
Well, you had to win. Well, we can discuss. You got that win, though, with Corey Heim. I had William Byron in Cup finishing 8th. I had Christopher Bell finishing 3rd in the O'Reilly race, and Ross Chastain getting passed on the last lap by Corey Heim. He finished 2nd. Again, you had the win. You had the race win. I had the better average finish of 4.3. So it was Denny Hamlin who did you in on average finish. But I'll leave it to you because we kind of decided for us last week how we were going to decide, and it went to me. I'll leave it to you. You got the race win. If you want to say that's my weekend, then you go for it. It's your weekend.
I'm going to, because here's really what it comes down to for me.
Because I don't really feel like being the week winner because William Byron was just marginally less relevant.
I get that,
marginally more relevant than Denny Hamlin.
Here's what I'll say. There were 3 races this weekend. You had the winner in 2 of the 3. To me, that's as simple as it gets. It does. Okay. I don't care about, winning is great, but to me,
what do you
it's
say, moderator, producer Devin? What do you think?
Yeah, maybe Devin should make the call on this one.
Chime Devin in on this. Which, by the way, shout out to Devin last week filling in for you.
Yes, by the way, thank you for keeping the show rolling for me when I was going through a lot last week and couldn't make it. So I appreciate your efforts.
So what do you say, producer Devin? What do you say?
Okay, we'll have to translate because Devin's
chiming
audio's
in,
not,
but he's not recording. So lay it on us, Devin. What do you think? So, producer Devin in our ear, we are asking you, Devin, our producer, who won the race picks for the weekend. Should we give it to John for getting the race win, or do we give it to me for the better average finish? John's logic is that I had better finishers in 2 out of the 3 races, so that should be good enough to give me the point. But I'm asking you as a moderator, does Corey Heim's race win matter for anything? Or are we going to be like the modern day points and chase and not worry about the win so much? Should the win count for more? Lay it on us, Devin. He's talking in our ear, folks. Okay, so moderator Devin.
Long drought
this
is over.
Just in,
Thank you,
folks.
Devin.
Moderator Devin says John gets the win with Corey Heim's last lap win, and I'm willing to give it to you because that was the most spectacular moment of the weekend. So,
well, thank you.
It really
says a lot. It really says a lot when the both of you are like, John, go ahead, you take it. When I'm like, nah, I'm good, and then I'm trying to give it to you, and it was a rough stretch.
We want to win,
we do
right?
because
I want to.
I kind of decided. I decided last weekend when I had to make these picks. You guys had to record early because it was a small window. That I was like, you know what? I have to be done picking the likes of Cole Custer in the zero car. As fun as
It
that
was a
is to like
wild
watch.
choice. It was
Well,
a
like
wild choice.
like as fun as that is to be like, yeah, that'd be cool to like root for. It was also like,
Yeah,
you know what? Like I'm kind of getting my ass kicked right now. I should probably stop messing around. So that's when I
that's
was like,
fair.
okay, I'll go chalk. I'll go with Corey Heim because duh. I'll go with whoever's driving the '88 JRM car because it's going to be one of the Hendrick guys, and then I'll go with Denny Hamlin because he won this race a year ago.
Yeah.
There we go. So
So
thank you. I
with
finally
that being
won.
said, you're on the board again. It's 4-2. But now that you got the week win, I guess that means the real reason why we had that discussion is I get to pick first for Martinsville.
All right, so let me kind of go over the. You want to go over the Cup or the O'Reilly entry list first?
I'll go over the Cup entry list real quick. It's pretty simple.
Okay.
I don't need it in front
One
of me to
open
remember
car.
it. You get
There's only one
your
open
your
car.
36 regulars. Alex Bowman is still slated to be out this week, so I believe it's still Justin Allgaier in that 48 car filling in for Alex Bowman.
Yep.
So hopefully he gets back soon. The only non-chartered entry this week is the 33 from RCR. That will be Austin
Your boy.
Hill. Yeah, Austin Hill in the 33 at Martinsville. So that's basically your Cup lineup this week. Nothing too outrageous other than the Alex Bowman stuff. And then you got the Martinsville entry list in front of you. Anything spectacular? I think it was a little more chalk this week in terms of guys being in regular cars.
You mean for the O'Reilly series?
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. So there's 40 entries for 38 spots. So 2 cars will go home. As far as the
Lots of
open
cars.
cars, you've got Dawson Cram in the Mike Harmon car, the 74. You've got the number 9 car for JRM, but it's going to be Lee Pulliam. Is that how you say Pulliam?
Lee Pulliam. Yep. He's a short track guy.
Perfect, thank you.
He's a-
I would
he's a
assume
big-
so.
Yeah, he's a big late model guy.
It would be
They talked about it a
atypical.
little bit on the Dale Jr. download a couple weeks ago. So if you're interested to hear more about him, check out the Dale Jr. download. I'm sure he's got plenty on him. But it'll be interesting to see this. I think
And then
he's won an O'Reilly race before. Could be wrong.
Luke Baldwin is going to get his first O'Reilly start in the Hettinger Racing Ford, so that's critical because it's a
5
Ford.
car.
Something I can't remember when this happened. I think this was I think it's something we didn't get to talk about was the whole Daniel Dye suspension thing.
Yeah, so we skipped top laps today because there wasn't a ton to talk about. But the Daniel Dye situation, it's not so prevalent right now in O'Reilly, but as it relates to the truck series, he's the current full-time driver for the 10 Mopar Dodge Ram truck. He's been indefinitely suspended upon completion of sensitivity training for some, I don't even know how to put it. He got on a live stream on Whatnot and
He was being a dumbass.
He's got talking about an IndyCar driver, and he was doing it in such a way that could offend a lot of people. And it's not something that I don't think Ram or Dodge or anybody in that camp was looking for out of a full-time driver. I don't know specifics about what he said. I think it was more or less the tone of the way he was saying it, the way he was kind of in jest over an IndyCar driver. So he was indefinitely suspended by both NASCAR and his team and getting sent to sensitivity training. Now, the Truck Series is not racing this week, so it's not applicable for this week, and I don't see the 52 car on the entry list.
That is why I was thinking about it, because that was the 52 car was like one of 3 Fords in the field, and now that Dye isn't racing, I'm going to assume that AM Racing isn't going to pop in another car, so it's probably, man, we just lost one of our 3 Fords. Oh, man. And, man, for Dye, real quickly, he has such a close tie to Ram because his dad owns a dealership, and that's how he had the connection here. I don't want to say he had infinite job stability before this, but just how stupid do you have to be to throw that away? So I mean, that's just insane.
And not only that, but if you followed the series at all lately in the last few years, one of the bigger sponsors that we've seen with Daniel Dye is a company that's built around. It's called Race to Stop Suicide. and it's about, helping people that are thinking about those kinds of things. So when you kind of perpetuate a mentality that's just, it's not for everyone. It's a bad look for everybody. It's why like, should it be the iron hammer here? Maybe not, but it's like, we got to be smarter than that, right? We're not 14-year-olds, BSing on Facebook with your buddies anymore. This is a real world. You're an adult. You're a race car driver, and you've got sponsors. And Ram, like you said, you got people at Ram that are supporting you and could theoretically support you for your whole career. And I think you kind of took that liberty, didn't take it seriously enough. And the old adage in racing, John, is that the worst place for a driver to be is sitting at home watching somebody else in his race car.
And
that's what happened this weekend.
And if the standard of what we've seen with Noah Gragson and Kyle Larson before him as far as indefinite suspensions go, he will not race again this year. I don't know that that's 100% going to happen.
You think that's going to be a whole year thing, huh?
Well, that's what I'm saying is, like, I'm not certain how this is going to work, though, because it's definitely not at the same level as what Kyle Larson did. And it's earlier than that happened. So I'm just pointing out that's kind of been the standard, is that when someone gets suspended like that, they're done for the year. Gregson got suspended with like 10 races left or something, so there wasn't much of the season. So keep an eye on it. We'll see
how much of that do you think, though, maybe sponsor driven, right? Because the Larson thing, he was suspended, and I think the big problem is that sponsors dropped him left and right, and it just you couldn't afford to put him out there.
That was definitely part of it.
Yeah, and then Noah Gragson, maybe the same thing. I don't know. I don't see Mopar dumping him completely, but I do think I'd be surprised if it was a whole year.
I would be too,
honest with you, John.
But
in the modern day, I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised if he wasn't back before the end of spring.
I think he will be back this year. I don't think it's wise to put a timeline on it because
we don't really know how that's not to say that I know the right answer to that. Should he be suspended for a year or not? I don't know. I'm not a direct race director, but whatever it's going to take for the message to sink in that, your behavior matters, then that's what it needs to be. But
so anyways, we're our picks.
Yeah.
Who
So if you won last week, we're at 4-2. We'll start with Cup.
We went over the two open entries. It's a Mike Harmon car, which is not really applicable, and the number 9 is a short track ace for JRM. Yep. Raja Caruth is in the 88. Ross Chastain is in the 91 DGM car. I'm not really sure why, but he is. The 32 car, which has been Raja Caruth, is going to be Andrew Patterson. And I think there was one more in here I wanted to highlight. Brent Cruz is now full-time in the 19 for the rest of the season.
Okay, great. So for the Cup Series this week, John, at Martinsville, we're gonna take a swing here. And I don't want to do this week. I do want to bring up a rule, not a rule change, but an addition. I think starting next week, because I don't have enough prepared right now, and starting next week for the Cup Series, we should pick a Big 3 driver and a non-Big 3 driver.
Oh, like a dark horse?
Kinda, yeah. But it has to be outside the big 3.
Okay, why can't we do it this week?
Well, if you have notes prepared, if you're prepared to do so, I'm all for it.
But who cares? I'm not going to go. I'm not going to.
Because we don't have a Truck Series race. We don't have a Truck Series race to pick. So, that being said,
we'll start with the O'Reilly pick. Then we'll do Cup, both our picks. So yeah, go ahead with O'Reilly then.
So for my O'Reilly pick, I'm gonna go with. I was actually gonna pick Cup first, but that works.
Either or, whatever you want.
Okay, so my first Cup pick was gonna be Chase Elliott.
Okay. That's a good pick.
We're going to go with it. He's, if anything, in this next-gen car, that 9 car has showed speed at short tracks. He's the guy that's kind of stayed in the top 10 and really, really kind of lingered there enough so he'll qualify in a decent spot in the lineup there. He's still top 5 in points. Hendrick hasn't hit the win tally yet this year. I'm thinking maybe Chase Elliott this weekend. And then he can
I think that's a really good call.
Wave the banner this week.
I think that's a good call. He's one of the best.
Who do you got?
Who do I got for a Cup?
Your big 3 Cup.
I'll take Ryan Blaney.
Yep.
Honestly, it was probably down between those two guys, but I'll go with Blaney. He has a really great average finish here. Usually performs pretty well. I know the fall is typically his race, but I figured Elliott was probably going to be my pick originally, but I'll go with Ryan Blaney this time.
Okay. So
And
who's
for the
your
record,
dark horse?
big three. So big three again. I mean, I guess we could technically consider Justin Allgaier not part of this. Not
Sure.
that we're going to be picking him.
Yep.
And I think Josh Berry
True
and the
dark
Wood
horse.
brothers. Yeah, so I think that's the four Gibbs cars, the three current Hendrick cars, and the three Penske cars, right?
Yeah.
Although Austin Cindric is kind of, anyways.
Or two Penske. The two Penske, I guess. Although Joey Logano hasn't really looked the part either. But,
No.
you know.
My heart wants to pick Tyler Reddick just because of how good he's been, but this is actually one of his worst tracks.
I think I know where you're going with this.
I really, you know what? I'll do it. I'll go with Ryan Preece. Short track ace. I remember
Okay.
this race. I think it was 3 years ago. He led something like 200 laps to start the race, and he won the Clash this year. So I'll go with the momentum for Ryan Preece.
Ryan Peace is a solid pick. We saw him get that win like you just mentioned. You get the win at the Clash. Relatively short track. I'm gonna go in a little bit of a different direction, and you and I can have a conversation in a minute about whether or not this should still be considered a non-Big Three team or not. I am gonna go into the 2311 camp, but it's not going to be Mr. Tyler Reddick. It's actually going to be Mr. Bubba Wallace. This guy is right there in the top 5 of average finish at this racetrack in the last 8 races, being the next gen era. Or I'm sorry, he's just outside the top 5. He's got an average finish of 10.9 at Martinsville in the next gen era. In 8 races, he's got 4 top 10s, 2 top 5s. He's one of the first people on that list outside of the only other person that's a non-Big Three member in that range there for average finish is Ross Chastain. But I haven't loved what I've seen out of Trackhouse lately. I haven't seen the speed out of them that we have out of 2311 to justify jumping to Ross Chastain right now. So I'm going to go with Bubba Wallace in this spot. And then for my O'Reilly pick to round things out for me, I'm going to go with Sam Mayer. And
Sam Mayer,
Haas
you
Factory. Yeah. It was a toss-up for me between Sam Mayer and Sheldon Creed, but I wonder if we got that only Sam Mayer win out of the way already. So, or not Sam Mayer, the Sheldon Creed wins. So I'm going to go with Sam Mayer in the 41.
I was thinking about that too. Gosh, there's a lot of interesting names. I'll tell you what, I'll go with the name that might be a little surprising, but when you think about how well he's done here in the past, including a win here before, I'll pick Sammy Smith. I know Martinsville tends to be one of his better racetracks, so that's who I'll go with this week.
I like that. All right, so just to really quick recap it, John, you have Ryan Blaney, Ryan Preece, and Sammy Smith. I have Chase Elliott as my cut pick. My dark horse is Bubba Wallace, and O'Reilly is Sam Mayer. So that's where we stand on picks. We go to Martinsville this weekend, folks. We're no trucks this weekend. We're going to specifically be O'Reilly and Cup, so we can enjoy a Martinsville weekend. I don't know exactly the dates of those races, but that's all we got for you. We'll potentially catch up again next weekend. I do believe the week after that we are going to take the week off. So we'll be back here next week to recap Martinsville. And then I believe after that, we're going to take the next week off because it'll be the day after a holiday. You might be able to... Yes. So after Rockingham being Easter Sunday, we're going to take Rockingham off, just as the Cup Series will. So we'll be here next week from Martinsville. Thanks again to all of our supporters, our likes, our follows, our shares. We get a ton of shares on Facebook. Another shout out to Amanda's Riverside out in Starlight, PA. I went and checked them out on Saturday, and we had a good time. Had some drinks. Looks like John's gonna sign off here. Do what you gotta do, buddy. I'll close this out. So yeah, shout out to Amanda's. Shout out to our supporters. Continue to like, follow, subscribe. keep an eye out. We fell behind on TikToks this week, but we're going to get back on that horse soon. So keep an eye out for some TikToks. And we'll see you all next week on Hauling the Mail.